Good evening and welcome to the Board of Governors meeting at the Reston Community Center for February 2023. We now call to order. First order of business is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Next order of business is the approval of the board minutes for December 5th.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Next order of business is the approval of the December 5th board actions.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the next order of business is the chair's remarks. Oh boy. It's 2023. I don't know. I went to Vegas, y'all.
Really?
Yes, and I had a ball, and
Where'd you stay?
I stayed at the Park MGM, right downtown, and Bruno Mars is the most fantastic, and he was not in the Grammys last night, was he?
No,
No,
didn't release any.
but his producers was.
Well, but he is, I think he has taken Michael Jackson's spot. Usher thinks he did, but no. Since this is the beginning of Black History Month, I thought I would read a poem by Nikki Giovanni. Does it feel like they're getting loud?
Yes. Think of it as fair.
Yes. And this is called Rosa Parks. This is for the Pullman porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to the Black Americans in the South so they would know they were not alone. This is for the Pullman porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown versus Board of Education. Because even though Kansas is west, and even though Topeka is the birthplace of Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the powerful "The Chicago Defender Sends a Man to Little Rock," it was the Pullman porters who whispered to the traveling man both the blues men and the race men, so that they both would know what was going on. This is for the Pullman porters, who smiled as if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal, unquote. This is for the Portland porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed his slight limp that he tried to disguise with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stutter and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when the school was out. 14-year-old black boys with limps and stutters are apt to try to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman porters who looked over that 14-year-old while the train rolled the reverse of the Blues Highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi. This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on a train all summer, he would have maybe grown a bit of a paunch, certainly lost his hair, probably have worn bifocals and announced his grandchildren on his knee, telling them about his summer riding the rails. But he had to get off the train, and he ended up in Money, Mississippi, and was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered. This is for the Pullman porters who, when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on the northbound train, got his body home to Chicago, where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." This is for all the mothers who cried. And this is for all the people who said, "Never again." This is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired. It had been, after all, an ordinary day until the bus driver gave her the opportunity to make history. This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary of the NAACP. This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that young man in Money, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman porters, would not have died in vain. When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement was begun. No longer would there be a reliance on the law, there was a higher law. When Mrs. Parks brought the light of hers to expose the evil of the system, the sun came and rested on her shoulders, bringing the heat and the light of truth. Others would follow Mrs. Parks. 4 young men in Greensboro, North Carolina would also say no. Great voices would be raised singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespassed against us. But it was the Pullman porters who safely got Emmett to his granduncle, and it was Mrs. Rosa Parks who could not stand that death. And in not being able to stand it, she sat down. The next order of business is introduction of the visitors. We have intruders with the music, but we have no visitors. So there's no citizen input tonight. The next order of business is the Finance Committee minutes from December 5th. Paul.
They are in your committee report section in the binders. I think I went through most of the stuff last time. Again, no big surprises. We seem to be pretty well on track for tax revenue, above expected for interest revenue. Personnel still working through, as of this snapshot, all of the equity impact plan ramifications for the personnel numbers for how much we're going to be paying people. Still working on getting all that stuff flowed in. Most of the stuff has been done for splitting out things into the new cost centers, and so it's good having that in there. That's really most of it. Actually, has the website gone live, by the way? We're going to hear about that in a moment. Okay. Because there was also some discussion in the meeting about the website. Also discussion about the roofing project, which again at the time of this 2 months ago was almost done.
It's done.
And exactly. And so, but this is the snapshot, and so I expect that we will get updates on that. So you can read the rest in the report.
Can we do all three and then, yeah. The next report is the January 7th strategic planning meeting.
The annual retreat?
That works then.
Is that the one? Is that the one you're talking about? It's
Yeah,
held
that's the
on
one.
January the
That's the
7th?
seventh.
You know, that's an inside joke about Mike Long, the former county attorney who really despised the term retreat because it implied we were moving backwards. So he made sure that this annual meeting was called something else.
Yeah, that too. But we did have our annual retreat on January the 7th. And you can read your reports. It's attached to the minutes. There are about 9 pages of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. But no, we did go over, it was a full debrief of the year's performance. We went over the financial performance. We went over by department, a review of all the data within the departments, and that was very enlightening. We talked about facilities and RCC's future. We broke out into a number of discussion groups, of which there were some outcomes. The groups were social, location, physical, and content. And as a result of all of those discussions among staff and board members, there were 3 motions that came out of it. The first motion was to reaffirm RCC's mission and values as reflected in the current strategic plan. The second motion was to reaffirm RCC's 2021 through 2026 strategic plan. And motion number 3 was to direct staff to plan a presentation regarding a mobile community center for the Community Relations and Program Policy joint meeting that will be held next Monday on the 13th. And with that, that was it.
Thank you very much. And since you're in the mood, would you?
Tonight, we had the long-range planning meeting. There were 3 items that were discussed. The first was the proposed facility rental rate adjustments that may occur starting in September. Those were presented to the entire board. The second was the FY23 third quarter memo and draft, which was basically the stuff that Paul went over and talked about the memo going to the county for the third quarter adjustments. And the third thing was this going over the slides for the Community Relations and Program Policy meeting that will be held next Monday night.
Thank you very much. Now we need approval of the minutes.
Move that all the meeting reports.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Next order of business is the board member input on activities.
Could we get a motion to forward the third quarter memorandum to the County Department of Management and Budget?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not quick enough.
Okay.
Side is very speedy.
Okay, the next order of business is the board members' input on activities attended since last we were together and we'll start.
Yeah, so I guess we were last together in January, so that would have been the MLK Day celebration, which was the first that I had attended at the Russell Community Center, and it was just incredible. An amazing turnout, a thoughtful and educated speaker who, if you don't sit through those things, you don't always understand exactly what's going on. So for somebody who did the research and is dedicated their life to learning and sharing that with us, I thought it was just incredible. And we had a lot of important community members there to show the support as well. So it was great.
Same for me, MLK Day and the long-range planning, which was not a retreat, because we moved forward. Yeah, those were the big events for me as well. Oh, by the way, and one of my great uncles was a Pullman porter. I have his pocket watch at home,
Okay.
in one of those like glass dome, like display things. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I did the same thing that he did and attended a lot of meetings. And Black History Month to be celebrated, It's amazing to me that in 2023, we still experience so many firsts.
Yeah.
This is the 53rd Super Bowl, and it'll be the first time 2 black quarterbacks face off against each other. And we're getting ready to plan a family reunion in the summer of 2024. And, we were talking about some of the firsts that we had as a family. My Uncle Charlie was the first sky cap in history for American Airlines back in 1938. And when he died, the president of American Airlines delivered his eulogy to talk about how he had changed transportation, which was pretty cool. His brother was the first black Division I assistant football coach in the country at what was Memphis State, not the University of Memphis. And you know, you just keep going on and on with these firsts. It's time for first to be over.
Yeah.
You know, it gets old, but Black History Month is to be celebrated, but Black history is American history that was created by black people.
And it's every month.
It's every month, it's every day.
Exactly.
And other than that, I got nothing.
And you've got to write the book.
The book is
You
coming.
have to write the
Book
book.
is coming.
He has a life.
Wow. I attended MLK Day here at Wrestling Community Center, and it's phenomenal. It's one of the better ones in the area, and people come up and say that all the time. There are a lot of great things that happen today. One of the first ones was having the opportunity to be in the I don't want to call it the back room, but in the room where we had the guest speaker and her mom there, just talking to them about some things they did, and they're wonderful people. But one of the things is Dr. Christopher
Yes.
was saying, she was, this place feels different. It's just, it really feels different than a regular place. She said it felt like a community. So it was really neat to hear that and just talk about some things that she did. And before her daughter talked about what she's done a lot of things on her own out in the different communities. I said, well, if we invite you back here, would you come? She said, I'd love to. So hopefully we'll get her back. And that was really kind of neat. I loved meeting Heather McGee in person because her book is intense. Everyone needs to read it. And I was listening to it when I walk, and I can't do it. It's so intense. I can read it at home, but it cannot wreck my morning. I don't mean wreck in a bad way. It was just, it's very fruitful and just wonderful. And to hear her talk about, as you're saying, the detail of her research and the commitment to this whole United States. And I say Black history is American history, and we need to pay attention, and it's woven through every aspect. So I love that, and so I really like that. I talked about a few firsts, and what made me think about this before I used to talk about firsts is that I also attended Paul Thomas's father's memorial service, and that was wonderful for me. It was very hard, but some of you may not know, Paul's dad and my dad were next door neighbors back in the 30s in DC, when very few African Americans owned their own home. So that was a big deal. I keep on asking Paul for what the address is because I forget. My parents aren't here anymore. But a few first, you two were talking about musicians. If you look up Al Gray, the trombone player, who played in Count Basie's band, that was my second cousin, my dad's cousin. He was the first one to take the plunger from a toilet and use it on a trombone.
Wow.
You never said that. He invented it. The whole thing about him in music. So that was it. And my parents used to get to go hear him play, and whenever he came to DC. So that was the first of them. My parents were the first African American couple to be married to the United States Naval Academy Chapel. So it's a big deal. I am in the process of writing a book, and it's hard to gather information, not just about, but a lot of firsts in the family. And these firsts are important. They shouldn't just be there. There should be so many people who come afterwards. My cousins in DC, this will be a short story. My cousins in DC were the first African American kids to integrate the Catholic schools in DC. And my cousin in 50-something, early 60s, was the #1 Catholic student in all of DC. Those don't get written in the history books, but so there's a lot of pressure, in some ways. But I think many of the people, the first, you see that wasn't that long ago. Those are uncles, cousins, family members, and close friends. And the reason I start with Paul's dad, there's, your parents were one of the first people that my parents knew from a long time ago. So when they're coming to Reston, the Black and African American communities have always been together and welcome people. And Reston is such a welcoming community, was from the beginning. They had Black Focus and all that stuff. It's still here. You have to continue it going, but it keeps you going. And I appreciate it, keeps you going from things that happened in the past. And when you're friends to this day, when someone's harassing you during African American or Black History Month, you say, show them who you are. I did show that person who I was. But it's just like, this is 2023, and you're fighting with us about whether or not Black history or African American history should be taught in schools. And you cancel an AP history course, African American, when every other culture we can learn French history, but we're not doing AP history. So I'll stop my story there. But there's a lot of firsts. We need to be moving past that. But this is a really important month, and so it's important to be part of Black American history, and I hope I will continue to stand on these shoulders that people went before. I can't even imagine some things they put up with. So that's my story.
We were so special, we had our own all-black Catholic school.
Right, yeah. They were, back in the day, you weren't told there were a lot of schools like that in churches. My parents said, oh, we had a special place for us. My mom says, no, the churches were segregated. She didn't realize that until she was older.
We were a mission, not a parish.
And this isn't a long time, this is in the
No,
50s, right?
this is- yeah.
Scary,
Well,
yeah.
when I was told, when our Catholic churches merged, we had St. Augustine, St. Paul, one had all black nuns
The Oblates.
and all white priests.
My teachers.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I was sorry to miss the Martin Luther King celebration due to some family commitments and issues that had to be dealt with. And I attended the retreat.
Thank you.
And I thought it was a very productive meeting. I'm glad that we had some tangible outcomes. And attended a lot of my granddaughter's basketball practices.
How is her basketball?
She's got more potential, honey.
Whoa,
There you go.
How old is she?
Good.
Go figure.
How is she gonna have her acting career? If
Now she's gonna play basketball.
She's gonna play for
She's
UConn.
gonna play for the Sparks in LA.
There you go, there you go.
I like it.
I love it. In her free time, go to the
It's
stadium.
gonna be like LeBron.
I like it.
Gotta work it out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but she's still very into her acting career. She was Cassandra in a show just recently, so anyway. So she's active.
Well, like most of us, I attended Martin Luther King celebration, which I thought was fantastic. I really appreciated the speaker, Heather. I did not get to talk to her, but just listening to her was really, really good. And of course, the movement forward in January. And I've been teaching my history of West Ollie course this month. And one little aspect of Black history, which I'm going to talk about in the next lecture, that I'd be willing to bet none of you know, and none of my participants will know. I'm going to have a little bit about cowboys. Most of my course is about Indians, but
But Black
when I mention
Cowboys?
You know about
You know about Black Cowboys?
Yes.
25% of the cowboys were black. Most of them freed slaves. And I'll be willing to bet very, very few. Everybody's heard of the
And many
Buffalo
were-
Soldiers.
Many were women.
A lot of them were women too. Oh, yeah.
Not very many in the trail drives, which is what the cowboys were famous for. Cowboys were ranch hands. They were predominantly men, but not all white men, not by any means.
You never heard of Black Bart?
There were cowgirls, as they called them, but they generally did not participate in the big drives. But anyway, we'll see how many of my participants on Wednesday had any idea about that. And so there's 2 more courses, 2 more lectures, and that'll be that course. My next course is in May.
Fantastic.
It's interesting how no matter, from teaching those classes and finding out how much the students actually know and how much they don't know. And I was always fascinated that Bob Simon could not believe that he had never heard, and now her name just read, Cleo Lane. He had never heard of Cleo Lane, and she did sing at Carnegie Hall. But he said, how could I have missed this voice? Or it depends on where your focus is. I did the MLK, and all of those who knew about my quest, I did find my D, and I sang Silent Spring.
She does
And
every year.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like, I don't know where it comes from. And it was a sad occasion because it was the first concert after the passing of Dingwall Fleer. But we we came together and did that. And it was fascinating to find out about Heather's mother, who has all of these accolades and accomplishments in her own
Nice.
right. Yeah, so good. So I wrote, the piece I wrote, I said, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. But they were really impressed with this community center and said that they will be coming back. We're all talking about first and stuff. I don't know if any of you, because if you're not friends with people, you don't necessarily see their stuff. But Robert Hooks is my cousin, and he has a piece the other day, because he's talking at Black History Month, talking about Langston Hughes. This man, talking about the book, he's trying to write the book, and he has met everybody in theater.
Wow.
So there's a whole, because he did the DC Black theater.
The theater play?
Yeah, but it was in the old Colony Theater. And it was so funny because I'll never forget, my mother went to see one of the plays and she came back, she said, nobody wants to see that. Because it was a kind of theater that told the real
Yeah.
stories. My mother said,
It's
we
not-
don't need,
not fun.
yeah, you don't
Not
need to
fun.
know that. And also Mark Meadows. I went to
Yeah,
the Mark
that was a
Meadows
great
concert. Yeah.
One more thing, congratulations to Larry Butler.
Yeah.
For his
Oh,
years
yeah.
of service, he's
Is he
retiring.
retiring?
He is.
He's retiring.
He is.
He's done a lot with this board and for the folks in Reston, and he is
Larry.
going to be sorely
Sorely
missed.
Very
Yes,
much so.
Larry
Oh,
was
yeah.
the glue that held
You-
it all
Oh,
together.
yeah.
You talk
Especially during the tough times.
Yeah,
When things have happened.
you're
All
taking,
hard years.
you're taking all of the bumpers off the bumper cars.
Yeah,
He
it's
left
true.
RA for
Truth
about a
be
year.
told.
He
Yep.
went to Ashburn.
Oh,
Came right back.
I went and got him.
Yep.
Oh, really? Wow,
I
wow.
said, Larry,
yeah, Kim
I need to
got
come back home.
He's probably enjoying his brother fishing and enjoying life
Exactly.
and drumming
Yep.
and just
Mhm.
taking it
His
easy.
brother was.
Well, he's not going until June, so
Right.
we'll find an opportunity to
to say
Do
have
something
a fun in
special.
person and
Yep.
Yeah.
be harassed.
Yeah. That'd be great.
With love,
He's a great guy.
yeah.
Okay, next order of business is the executive director's report.
And you have that. We've talked a little bit earlier this evening about getting some feasibility information about the solar panels potential of this facility and other energy improvements that we can make. And we've talked about the Dr. Martin Luther King birthday weekend celebration and concert by the orchestra. We also in January hosted the Reston Opportunity Neighborhood Summer Camp Expo. This is a program we do as a function of our role in Reston Opportunity Neighborhood. We had 25 different camp providers and out-of-school time providers here, and more than 100 patrons who registered and came through. It was really busy and buzzing. First time this year, we instituted a what's called a sensory room, a quiet space where kids and parents could take a little time out if it was getting a little too rambunctious in the community room, and that was greatly appreciated. We do a lot in terms of sponsorship in this community and extending support to our nonprofit community, but we also supported in the last couple months the South Lakes High School Broadway night performances. We presented holiday performances at Reston Town Center, the annual Gifts from the Heart exhibit that's held at RCC Lake Ann. Those artists have a shopping event day the first week in December, and they donate 10% of their proceeds to Cornerstones, and they had a significant contribution to Cornerstones this year, I think more than $3,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Lots of programs that occurred in December were filled to capacity. Social rentals, as we talked about earlier this evening, are back in more than full swing. And And so we're excited about that. The new website, soft launch date is overnight, Saturday, February 18th. For 2 weeks, we are not going to do a big PR thing as we unveil the website. We're gonna have a button, a feedback button on it for 2 weeks so that we can get feedback from people as they're using it and make whatever tweaks we might have to make or changes. And then once we're confident that any little minor adjustments that need to be made have been made, then we'll do a big PR push to unveil it. But I think you're all going to really be pleased with it. It looks quite beautiful, and the content scrub has been really, really intensive. And everything will be in the cloud. Everything will be updated automatically, so we're excited about that. We just talked about the third quarter assessment earlier this evening. We have hired a new community events director, Kaya Green. She is from Florida, and she will be starting with us at the end of February. I met her briefly. She's delightful, and I think she's going to be a terrific addition to the team here. And then I, as always, go to lots of meetings. I cross paths with Mr. Bowie. Many of them.
Thank you. Next order of business, is there any business that,
Continuing business.
continuing business? Is there any?
I would remind all of you that our volunteer appreciation event this year is the 5th of March, which is Sunday. You're all invited, of course. You should have gotten that email invitation. Please bring a guest. We will not be doing a sit-down meal quite yet, given all the virus
Stuff
stew that's
there,
around
yeah.
and about, but we will have a little bit of swag and a treat, and we will do the certificate of appreciation for all the volunteers who attend in the community room following that event. So hope we see some of you at that in March. And there's a performance on February 15th that I urge Lisa to
No,
attend.
I buy tickets. She's
Yes, she
passionate.
is.
Yes.
Really, one of the world's most renowned percussionists, and her ensemble is really fantastic. So it's going to be a great concert if you are looking for a great night of music. And I know Lisa will be there,
I'll be there.
and Bev will be there. Absolutely.
You want
At what
somebody
time
that
is
knows
the
that.
volunteer lunch?
The volunteer starts with the show at 3 o'clock, and then the recognition and gifts are in the community room afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay, is there any new business?
Just a little bit of new business. I know people want to go home, but I was thinking about pillar number 2, what we do with equity and how great that work is that we do. And the last question that was asked of Heather McGee, I was a young man who says, how do you deal with all the anger? How do you deal with this? And I was thinking about all the movies that we watched in the panel, and we got to talk about how you deal with it. But I thought that Heather's response of like how that we know how to sometimes push things down so that you can move forward and move on. There's time that you let the anger out. But for me, I just thought it was as we move forward and think about things, you need to know when to speak up, when not to speak up, but being in control of your emotions is really important. And for me, that just rung a bell in my equity work, because there's always people that sometimes just push buttons, but just in general life, sometimes you're thinking, know when to hold on to that anger and know when to let people have it. So I just wanted that, not new business, but I was thinking, she handled that so well.
She's good at that. I don't know if it's, I don't know what I look at on the things I see, but is it Hulu that
Yeah.
has
Yes,
the
1619
project?
project. Yeah.
Which is very intense.
It's
Yeah.
difficult, but it's
Yeah,
very
I
important.
had to lead the second one, so I'll go back to it before the last ones come out, because it's just,
It's the truth.
It's
Yeah.
the truth, yeah, she was on Morning Joe's when we were talking about it. You know, she would have just, we talk about
Yeah, she was
76,
all-
really go back to the beginning and do all the history.
yeah, she was with Ally Welty this weekend.
Yes.
That was, yeah.
She will be in Fairfax County. She's a joint presentation by the Fairfax County Public Library and the Plain Community Center. She'll be at
It's a waiting list. If you don't have your
all the-
ticket,
Yeah, there's,
That's right.
it's, right,
I don't know anybody special. I'm trying to sneak in.
wow, well,
That's it. I just wanted to
Is there anything else?
Say they're giving us the.
I knew I knew how to direct it. I played that before too.
So that sounds like the end to a contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
it. Just give us out.
Do you have something? Nothing? There wasn't a question in your.
There was none.
Okay.
Then that look.
All right, the December 5th, 2020.
No. Just go back to that one.
It's
February 6th.
You were
That one too.
anticipating Christmas
Okay.
or Hanukkah.
before you know it, it's gonna be December again. so.
It'll, yes.
Or March.
The February 6th meeting of the Reston Community Center is now adjourned. You are free to roam the country.